Well, Angola has revised the terms, conditions, and requirements of credit operations to the economy by commercial banks. According to latest data, as of 7th of April, bank and financial institutions must, in relation to credit to be granted to the real sector of the economy, grant credit in one of the following ways: medium and long-term credit for investment, including for the acquisition of machinery and equipment, must have a maximum term payback period of investment, and commercial banks must consider, in addition to financing with real guarantees, the type of financial leasing. The National Bank of Angola will decide on the measures, sanctions to be applied on a case-by-case basis, depending on the justifications presented and the compliance record of the commercial bank in question until the 31st of each year. And now to our next conversation. Angola, over the last 2 days, received a few positive developments: a new agreement with Italy to supply gas, a fresh investment by De Beers, and plans for the country's first ever IPO. To tell us what these mean for the Angolan economy, we have Matt Kindiger, practice lead, Sub-Saharan Africa Frontier View. Great to have you on the program.
Hi, thanks for having me on the program today.
Yeah, so are these developments, a result of the government's economic reforms implemented, in the recent years?
Yes, so we could say partly yes. The flurry of investments that we are seeing into the market over the last few days are partly a result of the government's concerted efforts to improve the business environment, to make the country much more attractive for foreign investors and to support growth. So what the government has done, especially since the election last election in 2017, is it's made it a lot easier for investors to establish businesses in the market, in the country. It's also made it a lot easier to import products. It's reduced restrictions on accessing foreign currency. And crucially, it has made it a lot easier for business travelers and tourists to get visas for Angola. That was previously notoriously difficult, and now it's a lot more straightforward. De Beers, for example, has cited Angola's improving business environment for one of the reasons why it took its decision to invest in 2 new mining licenses in the northeast of the country. So certainly there is a clear correlation between the improving business environment and greater investor interest in Angola. So certainly very positive developments. But I would also emphasize that Angola still has quite a way to go. So over the last few years, the government has been making a lot of pledges around implementing further reforms, such as privatizing sclerotic state-owned enterprises. It hasn't made very much progress in this regard, so there are still a large number of fairly unproductive state-owned enterprises that it controls, and it's struggling to privatize. And this does weigh on public finances and sentiment in general. And also, the government has struggled to meaningfully increase productivity in the manufacturing and agriculture industry. So although there are a number of benefits that the government has seen or the economy has seen as a result of pro-business reforms, there's still a fair way to go over the next couple of years.
Right, still a long way to go there. But will these investments, alter Angola's growth outlook?
So I would actually start by saying Angola's growth outlook is already looking a lot better than it was just a few years ago. So Angola's economy was in a 5-year recession from about 2014, 2015, mainly because of its very heavy dependence on oil. And with the depressed oil price environment and the impact of the COVID pandemic, the economy really was in a very long depression, you could call it. So in recent months, here at Frontier View, we have actually revised up our growth forecast very substantially for Angola. And this is because of 2 main factors. One is that global energy traders are looking for alternative sources to Russian supplies of oil. And because Angola is so dependent on oil for exports and government revenues, the very high global oil price that we're seeing, and we're likely to see oil prices remain close to or above $100 a barrel for the next 6 to 12 months. That means that Angola stands to benefit hugely from this current environment. So our view is that the Angolan economy will probably grow by about 3.5% this year, which is the strongest performance since 2014. So very significant and very upbeat by recent historical standards. But in terms of these recent investments and these recent developments, so for example, the decision by Italy to procure gas from Angola and the new mining investments, they certainly will have a positive impact on the country's short to medium term growth outlook. So we will see improved export revenues and investment levels in the market as a result, but they won't be economically transformative. They're a very good sign, they're a step in the right direction, but what Angola needs to see for sustained long-term improvements in growth is much broader or much higher levels of investment, and also much higher level of investment specifically into the non-oil industry and the non-extractives industry. So we're really looking for much higher levels of investment into agriculture and manufacturing, for example.
Right, not a good time for over-reliance, but the Kwanza has performed well against the dollar this year. Do you see this continuing?
Yeah, so the Kwanza has really been the superstar performer in Africa over the last year or so. So after losing significant amounts or depreciating very significantly from 2017 until late 2020, the Kwanza has actually been the world's best performing currency against the dollar since the beginning of this year. So it's gained about 40% of its value against the dollar to reach about 400 today against the dollar. So very, very significant positive performance. And there are a couple of drivers behind this. One is, again, very high oil revenues, which has driven a significant improvement in forex reserves. So foreign exchange reserves in Angola are rising quite significantly. And also what we saw is the Bank of Angola increase interest rates to around about 20% at the end of last year in an attempt to stabilize inflation. So inflation is running very high in Angola. It's above 20% at the moment, and the Bank of Angola is struggling to bring it down. So what we have seen is very high interest rates in Angola have drawn in some interest and capital from investors seeking much higher returns than they can get in Europe and North America, for example. So those are two reasons why the Kwanza has been so strong. In terms of the outlook, so generally, for the next 6, maybe 12 months, the Kwanza is likely to continue to gain value. And this is because of very strong oil revenues. Again, oil prices will remain very high for the next 6 to 12 months. But there is some downside risk to the Kwanza. So although the Kwanza is likely to remain, it could go beyond 400 into the 300s against the dollar over the next few months. We could see some downward pressure, especially if interest rates rise faster than expected in the US and the Eurozone. We could also see a bit more downward pressure if oil prices fall, or we see oil production in Angola beginning to taper off.
All right.
So certainly a few risks to look out for there.
Right. Well, quite a risky time for both countries at the moment. Thank you so much, Matt Kinniger, practice lead, Sub-Saharan Africa at Front of You. It was great having you. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, you too.